Welcome to the Hornets Hive Cast, the official podcast of your Charlotte Hornets. Here's your host, Sam Farber.
Welcome to another edition of the Hornets Hive Cast, your daily podcast with all the notes, quotes, and daily buzz around your favorite NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets. I'm Sam Farber, and it is a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us here today on the HHC, a winning edition. Hornets claiming a 114-104 win over the Washington Wizards to kickstart a 6-game road trip. Quite a way to do it. Many spectacular performances. We'll break them all down. We'll also talk about how the Hornets are sitting in the standings right now, coming up on the home stretch, quite frankly, of the season. About a third of the way still to go, but the Hornets maintain their top 4 standing now in the Eastern Conference and starting to create some daylight between the teams chasing for a play-in spot and maybe starting to get closer and closer to magic number territory to be in the top 6 in the East. Still a lot of work to do, but things trending in the right direction. We're going to talk about those items. Also, we're kicking off our Yellow Ribbon program this month in partnership with Bank of America. The Hornets honoring military veterans for their unwavering service to our country and their impact on our community. Our first hero joins us later here on the Hornets Hivecast. But first, we welcome back Matt Carroll, Director of Player Programs for the Charlotte Hornets and a 10-year NBA veteran, making his return to the HHC. Matt, how are you?
Sam, I'm doing great.
Well, let's get right into it, Matt. The Hornets, a 10-point win over the Washington Wizards, a number of solid performances. What are your initial takeaways from the victory?
I think, anytime you look at the schedule, Washington is a team you probably think, okay, we should get this win, but never easy. And I think when you have a player like Westbrook on that team that can go for triple-doubles, have big games, it's never safe. So I think as Coach Borrego and the team goes into it, this is the type of game, it's almost like a trap game. You can't take it lightly, but an important game, obviously, for the standings and a game that you know you can win, but you have to go in there with that business-like attitude.
Let's get into some of the individuals, and let's start with Gordon Hayward. He goes 9 for 19, 3 for 3 from 3, had 11 rebounds, 26 points. I guess all that talk about a shooting slump goes out the window because he came out on fire, 15 points in the first quarter. Good defense there by the Hornets. Cross-court pass to Terry Rozier. He passes on the 3. Back to Graham. Into the corner, Gordon Hayward. Catch, shoot, 3 is good. Gordon Hayward with the triple. Great ball movement there. Graham to Rozier to Graham to Hayward. And the Hornets are up 3. They are 4 for 5 from beyond the arc to start. Gordon Hayward, a really strong day. Came out firing, 15 points in the first quarter, set the tone for the Hornets on their way to this 10-point win. And Gordon Hayward, he has been in a little bit of a shooting slump, but overall, Matt, the numbers have been outstanding all season long, really commensurate with what he did in his final season in Utah, where he went to an all-star game and got the Jazz into a top 5 seed in the Western Conference.
Hayward's numbers are fantastic. It's awesome. 85% free throw line, over 41% from 3, and great numbers for anybody. And I think someone who takes the amount of shots that he takes, you compare it to the year he had in Utah, all, very impressive all seasons. But what I think is interesting about Gordon Hayward is, with this Hornets team, any given night, even though he started off the season as our leading scorer, as the season has gone on, Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham, you have 4 or 5 players at any given night can almost get 20 to 30 points. And not a lot of teams have that. I think you look at this team, you say, well, Gordon Hayward, he is our consistent staple every night. He should be our best player. And I think most nights he plays like that, But seeing what Rozier is doing, we've seen what early on what LaMelo Ball can do. Devontae Graham has his moments now. So it's really interesting because it's not like you have to rely on Gordon every night to be the leading scorer, even though a lot of the games that he is. So I think it's why the Hornets have had a lot of success this season that, hey, Gordon doesn't have to be a leading scorer, but when he is, when he's aggressive, it helps everybody and makes his team much better.
Well, to your point, one player who maybe was not expected to have a huge game in this one, considering he only played 11 minutes and only scored 2 points on 1 field goal attempt his last game, was Cody Zeller. He almost had a first-half double-double, ends up with 16 points, 13 rebounds, his 4th double-double of the season. And he said after the game that it just helped the team to start the road trip on the right foot.
Because it's a tough road trip, like you said, Brooklyn, Indiana back-to-back, Boston coming up. So we knew that we had to have this win. So tried to come up with a lot of energy, and I thought T-Row was huge down the stretch once again for us. A few minutes to go, they had kind of worked their way back in the game, and He had, I think, 3 buckets in a row. So he was huge for us once again, and that's what he's done for us all year.
We'll get to T-Row in a minute, but big performance for Cody. It's good to see him getting on track because I don't want to get too far ahead of things, but if you're looking to potential playoff matchups, if the Hornets are going to go up against a high-quality center on the other side, Cody Zeller has to be the Hornets' answer. There's no other, real options on this team that can compete on both ends of the floor the way Cody has demonstrated he can, and last night was one of his best.
It was. And, Cody's a veteran. He's been around. He knows the significance of this game, the first game of a road trip. And he came in with the right mentality. He got 16 and 13 boards. And he's not going to do that every night, but he's capable of doing it. And I think that's what's, valuable about a guy like Cody Zeller is he has the ability to get you that on certain nights, certain games. And playing the center position, he has some tough matchups. You think of the guys he's been matched up against, and maybe guys are a little bit heavier, stronger, whatever you want to call it, and he battles and he competes and he gives you what he can. And then he has games like tonight where he kind of blows up and goes for 16 and 13, and that's a big part of the success of the Hornets.
Finally, the player he mentioned, Terry Rozier, is 5th consecutive 20-plus point effort. He goes for a team-high 27, and we're renaming it officially. Clutch time is now officially Terry time. Rozier, one-on-one with the rookie Avdia. Rozier at the three-point line. Step back on the way. It is good. Terry Rozier drilling another Lowe's three-point shot. Timeout, Washington. What a sequence. I mean, what more can you say? I said also during the broadcast, Matt, that fans that are being a little harsh on Gordon Hayward, don't expect Terry Rozier to score 27 points a night every night. At some point, he's going to have an off game, but it hasn't come anytime recently.
Terry Rozier is hot as a firecracker. I mean, fourth quarter, it's almost like if you're watching these Hornets games this season, he's your guy you're looking to. You almost wait for him to kind of take over in those clutch time moments, and he just answers. I mean, it's like he really hasn't had many off games late in the game when he's rolling, and you can just see his confidence growing each game, every big shot he hits, and he wants it. You can tell he's enjoying being in this position to be this closer, and you're not talking about just, getting to the rim or certain type of shots. He makes every shot. He gets to the rim, he makes threes, he makes shots off the dribble in the mid-range, floaters. I mean, just a complete skill set, and you have to have the right mentality to be that kind of guy that you can count on late in the game, and you can tell he is loving that position.
Also, first game since he was announced as the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. I thought he should have won it once earlier this season. There was a week in February where he averaged like 30 points a game, and they gave the honor to Sadiq Bey. The Pistons were 3-1 that week. The Hornets were 2-2. I don't know. I'm a rookie, Matt, but I thought it was Player of the Week, not Team of the Week. So, what do you think? Should Terry be working on his second one, maybe heading into his third based off what we've seen to start this week as well?
Yeah, I think he has as good a chance as anybody. I'm a little biased, too, because we've seen it up close and personal. But, no, he's having just an incredible season. And, having the ability, having the confidence to make these clutch moment and plays, that's the part of the game when most guys don't want the ball. You got to have a lot of confidence to want to take the big shots that is going to decide win and lose games. And, I think he's earning multiple Player of the Week for sure.
Well, Matt, we got a lot more to talk about when it comes to the Hornets. This 114-104 win last night for Charlotte, a big one, gets them to 24-22 in the standings. We'll talk about how the Hornets are shaping up heading in to the rest of this 6-game road trip. But coming up next, in partnership with Bank of America, the Hornets are honoring military veterans for their unwavering service to our country and their impact in the community with the Yellow Ribbon program over the next few months. This month, we are honoring retired Command Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army, Scott C. Schroeder. He's my guest next here on the Hornets Hive Cast. Buzz City, it's time to return to the Hive. There are a limited number of socially distanced tickets available for each game. Fans can expect enhanced cleaning and disinfection procedures and an upgraded ventilation system at Spectrum Center because the health and safety of the team, staff, and guests is the top priority at the Hive. Be there at Spectrum Center for a Sunday matinee April 11th when the Hornets host Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks at 1 p.m. Tickets on sale now at Hornets.com. In partnership partnership with Bank of America, the Hornets honor military veterans for their unwavering service to our country and their impact in the community through the Yellow Ribbon Program. And we're going to recognize one of our heroes today. His name is Scott C. Schroeder, who retired from the military in November of 2017 after 34 years of service in the U.S. Army. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today on the Hornets Hive Cast.
Oh, Sam, it's an honor. I appreciate you and the team doing this for veterans, recognizing veterans.
The honor is all ours, most definitely. So 34 years of service in the Army. What are some of the biggest takeaways, memories that you have of your time in the service?
Oh, shoot, I can't tell you, Sam. There's so many. It's just like any other endeavor. It's all about the people, isn't it? It's the people. You do a lot, but it's the people and the relationships you make during service that are the greatest takeaways.
In particular, you spent over 5.5 years deployed into combat theaters, including in Iraq and Afghanistan. What's a message that you would want to make sure our fans and followers know and appreciate about what it takes to go abroad into a combat theater in this modern military?
I'll just tell you this. We have great soldiers, sailors, airmen. They're absolutely phenomenal, and it's a great generation. There are a lot of young men and women, whether they're serving in the military or not, that are super.
Well, we are so appreciative of you for your 30-plus years of service in the U.S. Army, but even once you were done, you never stopped serving your country and your fellow soldiers. Since retirement, you volunteered and worked with a nonprofit focused on veteran and first responder suicide prevention and rehabilitation. What can you tell me about the organization and its work?
That's a great organization, and they do great work, and really, like you said, focused on veterans and first responders' recovery from both physical and emotional injuries. And we did it through cycling. And we had a nationwide group of veterans and first responders, and they would cycle in their communities, and then we would bring many of them together for large rides, multi-day events that we would call challenges. And an example of a ride would be Jacksonville to New Orleans, or 450 miles down the California coast. And really, the healing took place on the road.
What was your longest ride in terms of miles traveled and time it took to do the course?
So in a single day, we had different groups, and so we'd go different distances. But in a single day, 109 miles or so, and then we would be riding again. So between 400 and 600 miles in a 5-day period.
Extremely impressive, and I would imagine part of it is to help build that camaraderie, but also I'm sure to try and help raise money and awareness. If people want to get involved with that charity today, how can they do it?
It's called Project Hero, or We Are Project Hero, and they can go online and donate at We Are Project Hero. But we have some great veteran organizations inside Charlotte too, Sam, and I know you're familiar with Veterans Bridge Home, and one that's close to my heart is Patriots Path. And they help transitioning veterans find meaningful employment.
We've got Scott Schroeder with us. He is our Yellow Ribbon Program recipient for this month, the partnership with Bank of America for the Hornets to help honor military veterans for their unwavering service to our country and our local community as well. Scott, after all of your years of service in the military and after moving 11 times in 25 years, I'm told you and your wife, Marla, of 29 years, are finally able to settle in Charlotte and have a home base. What's it been like after years of moving all over the country and all over the world to finally have a home?
Sam, we can unpack our boxes. It's amazing. We're extremely happy with our decision to settle down in Charlotte. This is a great community, and we really appreciate you and everything that the Charlotte Hornets organization does to support the community also.
Well, it's our pleasure to partner with great organizations and great people like yourself. And congratulations to you on your outstanding career in the military and for all of the great work you've been doing. And we're very proud to get to honor you as our Yellow Ribbon Program recipient for this month. Scott, thank you so much for your time and for your service.
Thanks, Sam.
Hornets fans, be sure to download the Hornets app on your mobile device. The Hornets app is your access to all new features and exclusive content, including the new game day experience for every game this season.
Our thanks again to retired Command Sergeant Major from the U.S. Army, Scott C. Schroeder, our honoree this month in the Yellow Ribbon program in partnership with Bank of America. Matt Carroll, Director of Player Programs for the Charlotte Hornets and a 10-year NBA veteran, is back here on the HHC. Hornets coming off a 10-point victory in our nation's capital over the Wizards. They now have claimed the season series. If for some reason, and stranger things have happened, but if the Wizards get really hot and the Hornets fall off and end up somehow in a tiebreaker with the Wizards, Hornets will own it now with the head-to-head, despite the fact that as things sit right now, they're 7 games up on the Wizards. But you never want to tempt fate. It's always good to have every tiebreaker you can, and the Hornets own it over the Wizards. Matt, before we look to the standings, there was a story that came out yesterday evening. I don't know if you've heard it, but just so you get the background and the fans get it as well. The Utah Jazz were on their way to Memphis yesterday on their charter plane, and they had to make an emergency landing shortly after takeoff due to striking a flock of birds. It caused an engine fire and failure. Thank goodness no injuries to anyone on board, and the team was able to depart again later on in the evening. But reminiscent of the Sully Sullenberg flight with the Miracle on the Hudson, the plane having to land in the river there. Fortunately, this flight was able to make it back to the airport, but bird strikes causing the plane to have to reroute back to their original airport. Matt, you were in the NBA for 10 seasons. You were on a lot of charter flights. Did you ever have a situation like this, a close call scare?
You know, I've never had something probably that scary where you had an emergency landing, but definitely had some close calls. I mean, obviously, when you're on the plane as much as we are flying from game to game, you got to figure you're probably on over, 100-plus flights per season. You're going to hit a lot of storms, a lot of turbulence, and everybody has a different threshold how they can handle it. Some guys don't mind it. I had some players that, would want to have to sit up in the cockpit because they were so nervous they wanted to see what was going on. So everybody kind of deals with it differently. When I think back on my career, I think back in like 2008-9, this is when I was in Charlotte. Sam Vincent was our coach. We had guys like Gerald Wallace, Jason Richardson on our team at the time. We were flying to Milwaukee. We had a home game in Charlotte, going to go to Milwaukee that night, and there was this terrible storm up in the Midwest. So they decided to keep us back that night, and we were going to leave the next morning, which rarely ever happens. It's an NBA rule that you got to go the night before. And we decided not to because it was so bad. So we left the next morning, and the storm did not let up, and we were just stuck in the air. We were stuck in the air for hours and hours and hours. And I remember being up in the air. We couldn't get food. We had some pretzels, some chips, a couple Oreos. This is back, when maybe the nutrition was a little bit different than it is now for the guys. So we were stuck in the air. I remember we had to land, I think, in Minneapolis because we couldn't get to Milwaukee. And then we had to land, I think, in Detroit to get fuel again. And we kind of bounced around to 2 or 3 different cities. And then finally, I think it might have been around like maybe 5:30, we landed in Chicago. And then we had to bus to Milwaukee. And we made it to Milwaukee. I guess the game was a 7:30 game. I think we got there at like 7:10. We pulled into the arena. The guys are starving. I mean, literally didn't have any food the entire day besides a couple snacks. And they had some pizzas waiting for us in the locker room. So we scarfed down a couple of slices of pizza, some popcorn, and then we went out. And there was about 5 minutes on the clock. And then we got one layup or a jump shot, and we started the game. And we ended up losing the game, but we actually hung in there to the very end, almost won the game somehow. It would have been incredible if we did, but came up a little bit short. But I never had an experience quite like that one.
I should hope not. My goodness, what a story. I guess you experience a little bit of everything when you have 10 years in the league. Matt Carroll, Director of Player Programs for the Charlotte Hornets, here with us today on the HHC. Matt, looking at the standings after that win last night, Charlotte is now alone in 4th place in the Eastern Conference. They've been in the top 5 for about a week and a half, really since LaMelo Ball's injury. The team has rallied around one another. They've gone 4-1 in those 5 games and stayed atop that second level of the Eastern Conference. But it could be a bit misleading because even though they've been able to maintain this top 5 position, certainly a top 6 position for well over a week now, they're still only 2.5 games up on the number 9 team, Indiana. So in the matter of a week or a road trip, things can change drastically. If you're the Hornets, coming into this season, the stated goal was to make the playoffs. they've got a pretty good cushion to do that with at least respect to the play-in game because they now hold a 6-game advantage over the number 11 team, Toronto. But overall, do you at this stage of the season start to change your outlook on what your goals should be or manipulate any of those types of things, knowing that you're above 500, 46 games into the season, and are currently in the top 6?
I don't know if you want to change your outlook. I think if anything, it's just building some belief and confidence that, hey, listen, I think going into the season, you're thinking our goal is to make the playoffs and to be sitting in the top 4 now. I don't want to say it's a surprise to the team because as a competitor, to be bought in and working every day and knowing exactly how good and how much potential this team has. I think everybody around it, players, coaches, believes this can happen. But maybe from the outside looking in, it's a bit of a surprise that the Hornets are sitting top 4 in the Eastern Conference because they weren't projected that to start the season. But I think you just want to continue what you're doing. Each day finding ways to get better, one game at a time, because the race is close. You look at teams like New York, Atlanta, Boston, everybody's kind of within that. But Miami sitting in 8th. I mean, you have so many teams so close, so a lot can change. One road trip can, drop you from 4th to 9th. You just really don't know what's going to happen. So you can't get too comfortable. You take it one step at a time. But I think deep down you're starting to believe, hey, we're a playoff team and we can make some noise.
Yeah, I think for me, the surprise isn't that the Hornets are right around 500 or just above 500, because I thought the team, based off how they ended last season, the addition of Gordon Hayward, the addition of LaMelo Ball, especially after how he started, it seemed like the potential was there for this to be a 500 team. I'm surprised this record is good enough to be 4th place in the East. I'm shocked that Indiana and Miami and Boston and Toronto have underwhelmed so much over the course of the season that a 24-22 record, which would be good enough in the Western Conference for 9th place, is good enough for 4th in the East.
It's pretty hard to believe, but, I think, Sam, when you look even over the years, I think, the Western Conference has always been looked upon as having better teams, right? There's been talk about, hey, eliminate the playoff conferences. Let's not take each team from 8 teams from the East, 8 from the West. Let's just take the top 16 teams. So, there's been different thoughts and different ideas, but I think people have generally looked at the Western Conference as being stronger top to bottom. And maybe it is if you base it just on the records. But, what I love about the Eastern Conference is there's so much parity. It's like you have, I think, anybody within the top 10 that could beat anybody. And then, you go down to the 11th spot where you got Toronto. Toronto has been a great team over the years, NBA champions within the last couple of years. So I think a lot can happen. I think it's going to be an exciting finish to the regular season to see how this plays out.
Just looking at the remainder of this road trip, we'll let you go on this one, Matt. The team, again, where they sit in the standings right now, they're in 4th place. I think fans are starting to anticipate that this Hornets team is, as Mitch Kupchak has said, ahead of schedule and starting to put some extra weight on the remainder of this road trip. It's a difficult one, though. Charlotte's going to have their next game against Brooklyn, a team that is certainly in flux roster-wise with all the changes they've made, and there's questions as to who will be available for the game tomorrow against the Nets, but certainly it's one of the most talented teams in the NBA. Then night 2 of the back-to-back is at Indiana, then their first meeting with Boston, and then they'll wrap up the road trip with OKC and Milwaukee, another one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. The team, I think, has the right approach. JB always talks about one game at a time. They're not looking ahead. They're focused on, whatever is right in front of them. But we have the luxury of getting to look, at the bigger picture. We've said previously on some of those Western Conference road trips, 500 would be fantastic. 2 and 3, one game under 500 would be really good. What is your expectation, knowing the Washington game is in the bags as a win for the remaining 5 games on this road trip?
I think they can go, 1 over 500, to be honest. I just feel like when you start off with a good win like this, you're going into Brooklyn, obviously, is going to be hard. I have not been impressed with Indiana lately. And Boston, I just feel like we're going to match up pretty good with them. I'm excited to see that matchup. So I think we definitely have potential to probably, I'm going to say, 1 game over 500.
I like the prediction. All right, I know I said that was the last question, but I'm going to make this one because we're probably not going to talk to you again on the HHC before the game. The contest against the Celtics, who has more motivation? Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, and the Hornets who used to play in Boston, or the Celtics who have had to hear all season about how this hot, young Hornets team has come in with all the energy. They have everything that the Celtics were expected to have this season.
Well, I'm going to have to say that the Hornets have more motivation. I think you got Terry Rozier, who was a backup guard in Boston, and he's having the career year of his career. And then you have Gordon Hayward, fresh in his mind coming out of Boston from last season. So those guys, anytime you play against one of your former teams, you want to beat them, and you want to beat them bad. And even when it's a couple years after, you still want to play well against those guys. And this is pretty fresh for both of them. Now, granted, Boston has Kemba Walker, who's been, one of the greatest players to ever play in Charlotte. So I'm excited. There's a lot of motivation on both sides, but I'm going to say the 2-for-1. I'm going to take Terry and Gordon over Kemba for this one.
I like it, and I agree with it. Matt Carroll, Director of Player Programs for the Charlotte Hornets, thanks as always for joining us here on the Hornets Hive Cast. And thanks as well to retired Command Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army, Scott C. Schroeder, for joining us on the HHC. He is our honoree for the Yellow Ribbon Program in partnership with Bank of America. The Hornets honoring military veterans for their unwavering service to our country and their impact here on our community. Last but not least, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Invite you to join us again tomorrow. We'll have our preview podcast for the Hornets' second game of this 6-game road trip in Brooklyn to take on the Nets. Till next time, for everyone here, I'm Sam Farber saying it's been a pleasure and a privilege having you with us on the Hornets Hive Cast. And in the words of LaMelo Ball,
thank y'all. Have a good day. Wear your mask.
Thanks for listening to the Hornets Hive Cast. For more coverage, visit hornets.com.